This man is a heroin addict, a junkie, about to administer his first injection or fix of the day. The tiny dose of heroin involved cost him £10, which he's had to steal. At the time of filming, Roy is on the run from the police and faces charges of checkbook fraud. The heroin fix will be injected with a needle which has been used many times before into veins which have become so hardened he will have to try many times to get the heroin into his blood in conditions which would horrify a doctor. For Roy Palmer, and between 30 and 40,000 abusers of heroin in Britain, this is a way of life.
It's just a progression from one drug to another, you know. You start from smoking, speed. You get caught up in it.
How long have you been taking it?
2 years, roughly.
How much does it cost you a week?
£200. If I've got 3 or 4, I'd spend that.
Where do you get £300 or £400 a week?
Stealing.
Roy steals to pay his pusher, who may get his heroin from an illegal importer. It's a very profitable business, which has increasingly caught the attention of criminals on the lookout for easy money.
I was in desperate need for money, yes. My wife just come out of prison, and that was when it was mentioned to me. I thought I could earn a quick £1,500 or £2,000.
And the large sums of money involved in that business are very tempting.
But £2,000 was a lot to me, meant a lot to me, yes.
What is going to happen to you now?
Well, prison for me, certainly, yes.
For the first time in England, I suspect that you may well be on the verge of having large-scale organized criminals involved in the heroin trade. You have just the beginning of it now, but soon you may find that the marriage between the number of heroin addicts you are having in England and professional criminals may well become the most vicious, ugly element in your society.
Tonight, World in Action shows how dealing in heroin has become a booming business which has attracted the hard men from Britain's criminal gangs, and how the fast-growing number of addicts in every area are causing a crime wave to pay for their fix. The northwest frontier of Pakistan, at the border with Afghanistan, home of the Pathans. This inhospitable area is now the source of 80% of the heroin smuggled into Britain. Pathan tribesmen are law unto themselves, and vigorous efforts by the Pakistan government to control heroin growing have failed to stop the trade. Traditional links with the Pakistani population in Britain have made the smuggling of heroin difficult to check at our own borders.
The nature of the problem is that there is a smokescreen. There's a tremendous amount of perfectly legitimate trade, both in and movement of humanity for family reasons between the Indian subcontinent and this country, and it provides a very good smokescreen for that trickle, but very dangerous trickle of traffic that's dealing with heroin.
But that dangerous trickle is fast becoming a flood. The seizure by British Customs of 176 kilos of heroin last year was double the haul of the year before, and the seizures may be only 1/10 of the heroin which actually gets through. Customs have to rely heavily on tip-offs, and it was such information which led to one of the biggest ever seizures of heroin. Last May, this man, Khwaja Sethi, went to visit his native land in the northwest frontier province. Customs were watching, and when he returned to Heathrow, his luggage was searched.
The officers were initially disappointed as much that they found no drugs, but they did find some very important documents indicating that Mr. Sethi was arranging an importation of cotton yarn from Karachi into the United Kingdom.
2 weeks later, the cargo ship European Eagle arrived at Felixstowe carrying a container of the cotton yarn. Customs men searched the container and found that 12 of the bales of cotton weighed more than the others. They were examined more carefully. From the outside, all the cotton reels looked alike, but when half of the cotton was removed, officers found packages concealed inside. Further examination showed that the packages contained cannabis. The load was carefully repacked and allowed to proceed. The container was taken to this bonded warehouse at Duckinfield near Manchester to await inspection and payment of duty on the cotton. Customs officers brought the vehicles used in the crime back to the scene to show us what actually took place.
All mobiles from Ivor, stand by, possible arrival. Yeah, confirm we have an arrival. Maroon French wheels, Victor Romeo 15 Sierra. Maroon Peugeot 505, 2 occupants, no ideas yet.
This was the English end of the operation. The warehouse owner, Mr. Leslie Brown, was illegally allowing part of the cargo to leave his custody and being paid £6,000 for doing so.
Yeah, all mobile, stand by. He's manoeuvring the vehicle. They've got a trailer, they're hitching the trailer up. There's 2 white males, stand by. We've got lift off, lift off, lift off. They're on the way towards the Mike place.
Customs watched the car leave with the 12 suspect bales in the trailer and make its way towards Manchester. This was the climax of an operation which had taken over a year and involved up to 50 officers. The car was followed to a warehouse in the Whalley Range area of Manchester, where Mr. Setti, the man who'd arranged the importation, was waiting. Customs men demonstrated for us how the 12 bales of cotton were transferred from the trailer into a lorry owned by another Pakistani, Mr. Mohammed Munif. The transfer over and the deal done, the Englishmen were allowed to drive away to be intercepted later. Then it was time to move in.
All mobile, stand by, go, go, go.
As far as the officers were concerned, they didn't realise at that particular time precisely what they had seized. It wasn't until the goods were examined some 2 or 3 days later, in detail, that they'd realised that they'd made the 3rd largest seizure of heroin in the United Kingdom. The seizure consisted of 100 kilos of cannabis resin, worth about £200,000, and a seizure of 9.6 kilos of heroin, 78% pure, worth about £1.5 million.
That £1.5 million worth of heroin on the streets of Britain would have cost perhaps £20,000 in Pakistan, and news of such profit margins has circulated throughout the criminal network to those for whom bank robbery and security van hold-ups have proved too hazardous.
They hear in prison, they talk about in prison about the profits to be made from selling heroin. And you always have the criminal who gets the idea that he can have a very nice lifestyle by selling heroin and get around eventually to driving a white Mercedes and having a weekend in Bangkok or summer holidays in America, all paid for by the profits from selling drugs.
Do you think that they actually regard it as potentially more profitable and less risky than the kind of crime that they were probably involved in before?
Absolutely, yes. The risk of being caught is considerably less because the people you're dealing with are not going to inform on you to the police because they're dependent on you for supplies.
Professor Arnold Trebark is a special advisor to the American Drug Administration on the international heroin problem. He spent 10 years studying how the British heroin trade is taking on the uglier aspects of the problem in his own country.
We have every kind of criminal in the heroin scene. We have some you would call professional, some we would call habitual, some we'd all call vicious. In Britain, you had amateurs involved in it, or people who were dabbling, who would run an occasional kilo over an international border. Now, Britain is viewed, I'm sure, by the international criminal organizations and by the international heroin traders as a growing market, as a place where, you know, there are millions of pounds to be made over time because of the sudden growth and interest in heroin and the fact that addicts cannot find a legal source.
Until 1968, there was a legal source of heroin in Britain and little profit incentive for criminals. Before then, a heroin addict could go to his GP, and if the doctor was satisfied there was genuine need, he might prescribe just enough heroin to prevent the addict becoming desperate. But it was the 60s, a time of experimentation, protest, free love and free attitudes to drugs, which brought about an alarming increase in the number of heroin addicts. An inquiry looked for someone to blame and alighted on a handful of doctors.
There was a feeling of great concern, a demand that some restrictions be placed upon those few doctors who seemed to be prescribing a great deal of heroin to the addicts. Now, it is conceivable that these few doctors were overprescribing, but I think the good British government panicked. Instead of controlling those few doctors, they sought to change the entire system. And as a result, the power to prescribe heroin and cocaine to addicts was taken away from all British doctors, except those specially licensed by the Home Secretary. I say that was an error.
So addicts were referred to a few special clinics around the country, but soon even these began prescribing less and less heroin, which some addicts found impossible to accept. They stopped attending clinics and went to find a black market.
By forcing addicts out of legitimate medical practice into the arms of the black market, they have enticed professional criminals in. They've said, here, look, here's a wonderful place for you organized criminals to make a profit. You can sell drugs to addicts or to occasional users who think they need the drug.
That was an offer which many of Britain's criminals have found impossible to refuse. 2 months ago, this man, Billy Hayward, appeared at Inner London Crown Court charged with dealing in heroin. Hayward, a well-known character in South London, went to a meeting with 4 men who were prepared to pay £120,000 for 4 kilos of heroin. What Hayward didn't know was that the men were customs officers. In a rare interview with an undercover customs agent, the officer who set the trap told us what happened.
On the day of the deal, I arrived early in the morning at the house in Plumstead, and about after half an hour, Mr. Hayward arrived without any heroin. I was at this stage expecting 4 kilos of heroin. Mr. Hayward told me there was only 1 kilo available. And I told him I had the money, £120,000, in the car outside. He then left the house and arrived about a quarter of an hour later with another man, a Mr. Hearn, Eddie Hearn. The heroin was showed to me, and I accepted that it was heroin, and I told them I would go to my car and bring the money in for them. I then left the house and I gave a signal, and my colleagues went in and arrested everybody in that house and seized the heroin.
The man who owns the house and claims to have set up the deal is Terry Sell.
They produced guns and held me against the wall with a crowbar over my neck. I was wrestling with them until they said who they was. I automatically put my hands down, and they put a crowbar, held me up against the wall, pinned me down, and the police had a gun and pointed out at me. Then I see Mr. Hayward laying down with a gun in his mouth and one in his head.
The police had gone prepared because Hayward was well known to them. In 1966, he'd been sentenced to 8 years for his part in a clubland fight with the notorious Richardson gang at Catford in South London. 3 men, including Eddie Richardson, were shot during the fight. One of the men was killed. Hayward was convicted of causing an affray and possessing a shotgun. Another man involved in the heroin deal was Eddie Hearn, who has 19 previous convictions. Terry Sell, who says he brought Hayward into the deal, is resentful at the way he believes he was set up by customs officers, but accepts that the large profits of heroin dealing can tempt hard men.
I needed a bit of help myself, knowing that Billy Hayward is, with the reputation he's got, and his word is good by everybody around here.
What is his reputation?
He's a good man, and he stood
Does that mean a hard man?
Yes, he stood up to the Richardsons years ago, and I know that he's capable of handling himself.
Does it seem to you to be something, though, that would attract people who, let's say, don't mind where they make money?
Yes, I regard it as tempting, yes.
In the United States, there has been no legal source of heroin through doctors, and addicts have for many years turned to organized crime for their supplies. Nowhere is the effect of that more evident than in New York, a city with roughly the same population as London and 10 times as many murders.
You have to realize that addicts have a tremendous craving, especially in relation to heroin, to purchase more heroin, more heroin, more heroin. We see a tremendous amount of burglary and tremendous amount of street robberies, muggings, stores being stuck up, people being taken advantage of in their homes, people coming back from shopping. We have a situation with the elderly people where they're pushed into their apartment. And a great many of these crimes are committed by addicts who are trying to raise enough funds to buy more heroin. The financial end of it is staggering, in the amount of money that has to be stolen to support a heroin habit.
New York seems a long way from anything in Britain, but recently the first ever police drug squad conference in Scotland was told that in some areas 4 out of 10 street crimes are associated with the drugs habit.
There's a general increase in this crime every time that there's a load of illicit heroin hits the streets, because drug addicts now find that they have to pay for their drugs much more rapidly than they had to in the past, and therefore you're liable to have an outbreak of a minor epidemic of housebreakings, for example. People trying to get money to pay for their drugs.
The cycle of stealing all night and fixing heroin all day eventually overtook this man, 34-year-old Robert Kane, who recently appeared on a television programme in Scotland, talking about his experience as a heroin addict. 6 months later, Rab Kane was dead, victim of a vicious attack because he couldn't steal enough to pay his pusher.
Well, he did owe money, but we'd already told him the week before they were getting paid the money on the weekend before Rab died, so I don't think it was the money. I think it was to make an example of him, to frighten all the other people that were into heroin.
It was the 7th of October last year when 3 men pulled up outside number 30 Clouston Street in the West End of Glasgow. They made their way up the stairs of the tenement block to the second-floor flat occupied by Avril Rado, girlfriend of the man they'd come to see.
The door went about 10:30, and I answered it. It was a tall, really well-dressed boy with blonde hair and dark glasses, and he asked for Rab. I went to turn down the stereo, and I turned round. Somebody else had ran in, a small figure dressed in black with a mask on, and he started attacking Rab. And then he ran over and hit another young boy that was in the house. And then he came over and he hit me, and I noticed it was a black baton. So I thought that's what they'd been hitting Rab with. I hadn't seen any knives. And then as he was going out, he hit Rab again a few times. And then I went over to where Rab was, and I ran it. He said to get an ambulance. So I was hysterical by this time. Eventually the ambulance came, by which time there was blood all over the place. They put him on the stretcher face down. And that was the last I seen of him. I didn't realise he was dead.
This man, William Elliott, was convicted with another man of the murder. He denied the charge and continues to do so, but Elliott admits that he was the main heroin dealer in Glasgow and has a long history of violent crime, including bank robbery using a shotgun, which led, after a police chase, to his arrest. In this tape recording, Elliott spoke of the gangland view of the heroin business.
What's going on out there now is nothing, man. Nothing. And the sad thing about it is, can he stop it? You're not going to stop it, because you've seen nothing yet. You've seen nothing. You're going to see what's happening in America. Well, it's going to happen, and it's happening here like wildfire, because it is a business if you're a criminal. I mean, if you want quick money, you're talking about thousands of pounds every week.
There's a professional band of criminals have moved into the drug market because they realise there are vast profits to be made, and they're bringing in what I consider an unacceptable form of violence.
And does this mean that the junkies are having to commit more serious crimes in order to meet the payments that they owe to these people?
Inevitably, they're going to have to commit crimes that are more lucrative, because the price, once you're hooked, the price will go up. You will require more drugs. Your body develops a tolerance to heroin, and therefore you have to increase your intake, and that means more money, and that means more crime.
How did you change when you took heroin?
Changed from being a 9-to-5 assistant manager to becoming a thief, crook, liar, cheat, just completely the opposite. Just changed into the sort of person I never thought I would be.
What did you used to do to get it?
Anything. Steal, burgle chemist shops, numerous chemist shops, lie, fraud, anything. As long as the end result was I was able to purchase drugs.
What was the worst thing that happened to you?
The worst thing that happened to me was, after I'd been taking heroin and other various drugs for a few years, I ended up with a couple of other friends in a fight situation over drugs. One person got murdered, 2 other people ended up in hospital, and we all ended up in court charged with murder, accessory to murder, and various other assault charges.
Dave served a prison sentence and emerged from jail to witness the impact the professional criminal network has had on the heroin scene he knew.
In the last 3 years, it's changed dramatically from where whereby you had to be in to the sort of scene where you could get it. You just couldn't walk out of your house and go and buy heroin. And now it's got to the extent where you can buy heroin at near enough any social event where there's a gathering of people, i.e. youth clubs, discotheques, things like that.
How easy is it to buy?
2 words, very easy. It's very, very easy. I mean, you could put somebody in any town in England and within a matter of hours you'd be able to buy heroin.
Could you do it?
Yeah, quite easily.
We put that claim to the test. We selected Harrogate in North Yorkshire, a prosperous spa town which would seem to be one of the least likely places in Britain to buy heroin. Dave had neither friends nor contacts here, but after brief inquiries at a public house just a few hundred yards from the town centre, Dave was able to make a deal.
How much did that cost?
The amount I've got here costs £40.
Now, how long would that last a junkie?
That would last a junkie with just an average habit a day, no more.
Could you buy that anywhere?
Yes, you could buy amounts like that in any town in England.
We handed the heroin over to the police. Our inquiries showed that the heroin trade is reaching to every corner of the British Isles. We went to Rhyl on the North Wales coast, a popular holiday spot for thousands of families every year, and associated with the more simple pleasures of sun, sea, and space invaders.
It's a frightening problem. 18 months ago, it really didn't exist as it exists now. Now, there is no week that passes that I'm not seeing a new youngster with a heroin problem. A youngster in a dilapidated, degraded state is stumbling into a clinic. And these youngsters are our local youngsters who've got caught in this problem.
How many addicts do you have in North Wales?
I've heard estimates now from ourselves, from the police, that there may well be about 1,000 people meddling with heroin in North Wales.
A lot of the time people will think they class junkies or people that take drugs with people looking dirty and being a mess and things like that. It's not always like that. People can be quite normal, act normal, be normal, look normal, and be on heroin or any other drug, come to that.
Janet has good reason to know. She has for 2 years been hopelessly addicted to heroin. Several years ago, she inherited this bungalow near Rhyl and sold it to buy heroin. When that money ran out, she told the manager of her local bank that she needed money for an expensive cure. She spent the cash on heroin and is now £5,000 in debt. Janet then turned to crime, including credit card fraud and theft.
How much money do you think you've spent on heroin?
It's difficult to say because you lose track, but I would say approximately about £10,000.
What heroin has done to you has turned you into a liar and a thief.
Yeah.
Does that make you feel sick?
It changes everybody. It does, yes. It changes everybody.
What's going to happen if you don't stop taking it?
I think it'll stop me taking it. It'll kill me.
How long have you got? You've been on it 2 years now.
2 years, roughly. 18 months, 2 years.
Left?
To live. Could be tomorrow.
Last December, the most recent government report on the treatment of heroin addicts was published. Among its recommendations is the continuing use of specialist clinics and a further restriction on the drugs unlicensed doctors can prescribe to addicts.
I think that would be a disaster. It's going in the American direction. And please, please don't go in our direction. I love my country. But we have created a disaster out of a problem here. Don't you do that. And one way that you can keep the problem at the level of a problem, at the level of an annoying personal vice, if you will, is to say to your physicians, addiction is a disease, addicts are diseased people deserving of help, and every British physician anywhere in the British Isles who has a patient who is an addict should treat that patient. It is not a mysterious malady. It simply calls for patience, for tact, for reserve, for calm, all of which I thought were British qualities and British values.
Roy Palmer was given a suspended jail sentence and is trying to give up heroin. Janet is on probation and trying to give up heroin. Dave has given up heroin altogether and has a full-time job. The judge in the case of Khwaja Sethi believed he thought he was smuggling only cannabis and sentenced him to 4 years. Terry Sell was sentenced to 3.5 years. Billy Hayward was sentenced to 6 years for dealing in heroin. William Elliott is serving a minimum of 15 years for murder. Robert Kane is dead.